Hello, you guys. I am super excited about this video because I'm showing you guys two different ways to make, what are they called? Cake stands. They're called cake stands. The one thing that, for those of you guys who don't know, we're allergic to, well, my daughter is allergic to, so I can't have cake in my house, which is kind of crazy. So no cake for us, but cake stands for you. Yes, please. So I'm going to be making two different versions because depending on what kind of kiln you are putting your stuff in, the version does matter. If you are putting a flat made all in one piece together, it will warp. It will warp. It will warp. So you don't want to do that. There are different ways and different techniques, and we're going to talk about it in this video and why it's important to know that. With that being said, I'm running to the shop, so here we go. Let's go. All right, you guys, let's get started. As always, I am using a round bat, and we're going to do a tiny bit of water and make sure that it's all on there, and we're going to get this baby all centered and just beautiful. I am remembering to keep my elbows down, and I'm holding this piece together, okay? We are not messing around. We're not letting this boss us around, and you guys can see how much is wiggling right now. So sometimes if it's a lot of clay, I like to use a sponge just because I feel like I have more like room on my pot, and then I'm not trying to struggle with my fingertips. Very much up to you guys. So we're going to get this centered, and once we feel like it is ready to go and we are centered properly, then we are going to go to our next stage. Just so you guys know, this is also going to be a cake stand that is actually all in one piece. So the first one that I'm showing you, it is all done together. It's a little bit more challenging. So if you are newer, this is a good one to challenge yourself. But remember, there's a lot of things in this that I'll talk about that you have to remember to do, or else it will crack or warp or just mess up in some sort of way. So I push this baby down, and now we're going to open our piece. We're going to push this in the center, but we're not going all the way down to the bat. We need to keep this a little bit thicker than what you would think. When you're making plates and flat objects, it needs to be a lot thicker than what you assume. So I'm going a little bit thicker than what I usually do for like my mugs or my other kind of pots. And then I'm going to open this, but I'm not going to open it super big because I am making two pieces here. So I'm kind of checking it out, seeing is that a good space? I eyeball this. You can do it and measure it and then keep your measurements, but we're going to start there. And then I'm giving it a bit of space, and we're going to create like a donut here. So I'm going right in the middle, and I am pushing down to create two rims. And I'm keeping the same distance on the outside right there as the inside of my pot. I hope that makes sense. I'm not going to push this down any further than what the inside of my pot is. And then I am going to get this part open, and I'm going to compress. Compressing is insanely important for this step. We are compressing and compressing and compressing because you have a lot of points here that will crack. So we want to make sure to compress the inside, compress the outside, and then we're going to regroup our rim here, and we're creating that lip. So think of this as an upside down cake stand. It is all upside down. We're building it backwards, and we're going to pull that little rim up, and that's what's going to be our little cake stand there. And I'm going to show you guys this pull right here. Do you see that little spot? We're starting at the base, and we're doing our pull, keeping our hands, pretending that they're touching throughout that whole piece, and regrouping our rim. And then starting at the bottom again. We're not ever just going up and down. We're always starting at the very bottom and then pulling all the way to the top and then regrouping our rim again. We always want to start at the bottom, pull our rim or pull our pot, and regroup. Every single piece of pottery, you guys will hear me say that every time I throw, because that's the process of it. And then I'm constantly getting the water out and starting again. So I just did a few more times just to get it a little bit taller, kind of skipping through because this part took a good second. So take your time here. So we're going this last little pull, getting it all the way to the top, regrouping that rim, get the water out. All the little beautiful stages. And then I'm going to hold. Now I'm going to do the outside where I have this tiny little rim here, and I'm going to pull just like I did for that inside, getting all the way to the top, compress, because we always regroup our rim, and that is like a compression as well. When we're regrouping our rim, it is compressing, and it turns out to look like this. Like it's really it it's a lot of little things, but the most important thing here is just compressing. If you compress this baby, it's gonna be fine. And then we're gonna cut it off. We don't want to cut this off after it has dried. It is really important to cut it off right now. We don't want it to warp. We don't want it to get all messed up. So I'm actually removing my little splash guards because they're in my way. And then make really good sure that you are in control. You are pushing this really tight. You're staying consistent all the way through when you're cutting this off. If you end up hiccuping or moving in any sort of way, you're going to have a little line here, and it's going to make that top part not even anymore. And when you go to trim, it's going to be a lot more tricky. So cutting it off is very important. If you have a bat that you can just wait for it to dry and it takes the moisture out, that's great. I think those are like the little plaster bats, but these are not. These are just plastic bats. So we're moving on to the second one, and this one we are doing in two sections. So we're starting off with the top part where you put the cake, and then we will build the actual stand part. So we got it centered. We are pushing it down. And remember what I said in that last one is that you really want to make sure that you leave it a little bit thicker than what you think. So I usually do about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to leave it even a little bit thicker than that. I'm not going quite to like a 1/2 inch, but I am leaving it a little bit thicker than 1/4 of an inch because I really want to make sure that it's not going to warp. You do need that base like a little bit thicker than what you would think. And the most important thing when you're doing this is making sure that the consistency and the like thickness is the same, especially once you open it. So just like when you're doing plates, this has a lot of similarities to plates. Once we open this, we have to make sure we are compressing. This part right here is really important. We're just going halfway through and back, halfway through and back. And then I'm going to actually use a yellow rip tool, and I am going to make sure that this is completely flat and even all the way through. So we're flat, we're even. I'm going to take a sponge and just redouble check because I want to know for a fact that we are good here, which we are. We have compressed this baby. And now we're going to move on to, we are creating our first pull. So my thumb is at that base, and I am going to be pushing in with my thumb, creating that little divot there. And then we're going to pull this up. Stay consistent. My sponge is not going to leave that rim the entire time. And my thumb and my sponge, they're best friends. They're pulling up all together. And we're going to get that little volcano looking thing here. Get that water out. And then we have our first little pull. Congratulations. It's beautiful. You can see your little throwing lines and check your throwing right there and make sure you're doing good. Then we're going to start at the base of our pot again. And now we get to go on to our actual pulls. We're going to pull that clay up all the way to the top, very slow, very controlled, and regroup your rim. And always clean it out afterwards. So I always make sure to get the water out of the pot right after I do my pulls. So I'm going to start at that base again, always starting at the bottom. We never wiggle our hands up and down. That does absolutely nothing. We always want to make sure we're actually grabbing a little bit of clay every single time. You should literally see a little divot in your piece as you're doing a pull. So now I'm going to take a wooden rib because I know I want this straight because it's going to be a cake stand. So you get the creativity here. You can make it however you want. Okay, I wanted it straight, and I am taking that little straight edge. You can use whatever tool you want, and I'm just cleaning it up with that, pushing it, making sure it is a straight line. And then I'm going to take our little lid master here. This tool is magic if you don't have one. You definitely need one as a potter. And I'm using it as a measuring tool because I need to see where the like stand part is going to go. And now a little pot check. I just want to show you guys. So this guy is there, and we're going to create the little stand part. So remember, that's going to be the bottom. And I did check it with my lid master, and same thing for this guy. I want you guys to remember cutting it off is actually really important. So we want to make sure it is very, very tight. And I used another round bat. I always use round bats for these. They're bigger, so you do need you need more room. So whatever round bat you have that's a good solid size that you want your cake stand, use it. And it's going to make a beautiful cake stand. But I did use a lid master and I measured it, and then I kept the lid master on the side over there without getting bumped because I need to know where it actually needs to be at for the base. So as I measure the base, it is actually the exact same size as that little circle that's on my bat already. So that made my life really easy. I always keep my pot or like my little piece of clay that I already pre-measured and patted down on, I can't talk, but it's inside of a bag. So I always keep it inside of a bag because I am a business owner and there's a lot of times where I'm making these videos and I get asked to help out somewhere or do something and I have to walk away. So just a little reminder with my little red arrow there is to make sure to keep your elbows down. If you're watching this and you're throwing, put your elbows down. We don't want any wiggling moments. And this guy he's actually pretty easy to do. We're pushing our little volcano down here. We already did all of our like beginning steps by centering, pulling it up into a tube, and now we're pushing it down into our hockey puck and keeping our left hand really solid there so then it doesn't mushroom over. We want to make sure our left hand and our right hand are both pushing. Now we're going to open this. And when we open this, when we're pushing this down, you want to go all the way to the bat. We don't want any floor here. We are going all the way down because we're going to connect this to our last piece that we just made. So when you're opening, keep in mind, you only want to go as far as what our lid master went. Okay, we want to keep that like base at that same little circle that we measured. So I was eyeballing it. If you want to get technical, you can take out the lid master and make sure to remeasure, which I'll do later on. And now I'm going to regroup my rim. And I'm going to regroup it pretty solid here because it was, whenever you open all the way down to the bat, it does cause it to get a little wobbly at first. So you just have to really make sure to regroup that rim. And then as you're pulling up, make sure everything is very tight and you're not letting it control you. That's a really important tip when you're doing this step. And then now that I have my first pull done, I am going to go all the way, starting at that base again. And we're going to pull all the way up. This pot, for some reason, I was not looking and the angles were pretty messed up. So I have a lot of like little clip outs because it was literally just 20 minutes of my head. So I figured you guys did not want to see that. So this little piece is not the best videoed and the light was way too bright. I'm sitting next to a wall of windows. So it was just, nothing was working in my favor. So I took this little rigid tool, which I love, and I just pressed the clay into it because I thought this cake stand needed to be a little bit more fancy. We have one that is very traditional, and then I wanted a fancy one. So why not? And you just want to make sure there's no water ever in the base, and we are going to just kind of, I do what I call the potter's lean. When you lean back and look at your pot, you always want to do that. It makes it so you can see your piece properly instead of just staring at it from the top of your pot, because sometimes if you stare at it just from the top of your pot, it doesn't look right, you guys. And honestly, how would you know unless you look at like a weird lean? Look at my weird lean. I do it all the time. You'll see it all the time in these videos. But we have all the pieces made. So we've got these guys, and here's my awkward, like, look at my pots. This is my look at my fish moment, and I didn't even smile, so that's what you guys get. I'm sorry. I apparently maybe was feeling awkward in the studio. I don't really know, but that was my look at my fish moment. Now we're going to move on to trimming. As we trim, I kind of want to go over the difference of the kilns and the warp and everything that happens after we trim and get this all set up. So if you have a gas kiln, the thickness and the compression, no matter what gas, electric, whatever kind of kiln you have, those are so important. The rim, when you add that tiny little rim, it helps protect it from warping as well. If you don't have a rim and it's just completely flat, or it's just like that tiny little piece that you have, it is going to warp. Just like plates, the rims are so important. I keep saying that they're like plates, but they really are. If you don't have that little rim and your pot is not round, it is going to warp. So, and that goes for a gas kiln, that goes for an electric kiln. I haven't done a soda firing kiln, but I assume all of them are generally pretty close. If you soda fire, put it in the comments, let me know. Let our people know because I'm generally curious. So, if you are doing these in electric kiln, a lot of people will say, don't glaze the food part. And I disagree. So I am actually only going to glaze the food part on this pot. And just for this one, the 2-piece one, I'm glazing the entire thing together. But for this one, I know that it has been compressed really well. It is still a thick, like, piece of beauty. Look at that beauty, okay? And I know that when I go into this, it's not going to warp. I'm not even worried about it, but just because of how it's made. So in a gas kiln, you really want to make sure that you're doing things properly or else it will. Gases, they go a lot hotter. The electric doesn't go as hot. We fire to a cone 6, so I know that these guys are going to be okay. But it is solely focused on how they are made. So for this one, I do have to make sure I add them together properly. So I'm going to get both of the pieces trimmed real fast, as you guys can see. And I don't trim the whole thing. Like, I am just kind of trimming this up. This guy was thrown beautifully. It needs to stay a little bit thick, so I'm not trying to take a ton of weight off of here. And you guys can kind of see that. I'm really just trimming off the little additives, and I wanted the top to just be a little bit more flat, so I really went in and made sure that it is completely flat as I'm trimming. The connection point of these 2 pots is really important. So because I am firing in a electric kiln at a cone 6, I know that I can score these 2 together and I will be okay. I don't use slip. You guys will never see me sit there and put slip on my pots. It just will not happen. I've never done it and I've never had to. If you score properly, you will literally never have to do it. I've learned it from multiple master potters, and I've never not once had an issue of my pieces coming apart. So I'm going, even, do you guys see my fingerprints? Like, this piece is too dry to even be doing this. So really, I shouldn't have even been able to put these together, but I still did. I put that on, tap centered it, and gave myself a little line so I know where it needs to be when I go to attach this. I'm not trying to willy-nilly guess. I am going to go exactly where it needs to be. So now that I have this pot, I'm gonna dunk it because you saw how dry it was. I usually would just get my serrated rib a little bit wet, but this time I am not. I am full on submerging this baby, and then I'm gonna get my serrated rib wet, and I am going to score. Like, score. I don't want to just leave little wiggles. I want to see that clay really pulling up. I want to make sure that I actually am creating slurry here. It's really important. We are not just scratching it. We are creating a product of scoring slurry. If you are firing in a gas kiln and you want to skip this step, there are a lot of potters that just won't glaze this little piece. And what they will do is they actually epoxy it once it's completely finished. And then you don't have to worry about warping. You don't have to worry about, getting it wrong. There's a lot more, it makes it so it's a lot easier to finalize your product. So you're going to come out with a result that is good and it works. So I'm just kind of finishing these touches. And I am smoothing everything out like crazy, just making sure that this is actually fully connected. We want to see no disconnect here. I really want to show and make sure that I feel like this baby is very, very attached. And I'm not even curious that it's going to, detach once I let it dry. When you're drying these, even if your pot is not dry, like mine is, you still want to dry this very slowly because we attach this piece. We are going to cover this very lightly. I'm not tucking it and suffocating it. I am literally just taking a tiny little piece and I'm going to make sure that it's covered, and I'm going to let it dry for a little while, and then I'll glaze it after I bisque it because that's how pottery works. But since it was upside down, I'm going to do a fast little zoom of just cleaning up my edges, making sure this is nice. And there we go. So 3 weeks later, let's look at what just came out of the kiln. And I know you guys just saw me create it, but I've been waiting weeks to create this video and it came out, and look how beautiful this cake stand is, you guys. No warping. Everything looks beautiful. I did not glaze the bottom because I didn't want to. I thought it looked gorgeous just as that tan color on top. And I love the look of rock clay. And then this one will be glazed. It just has not been in the kiln yet, but it's a lot deeper. So you guys can make this as deeper, as shallow as you want. I wanted to do two totally different styles to really show you guys in the videos. But I love this one. So tell me what you guys think in the comments and what you guys want to see next. I hope everybody has a beautiful day, and these cake stands are so cute.